So this past March, for the first time ever, half of California's energy needs were met with solar power. On March 11th, as reported by the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the EIA, on March 11th, for the first time ever, over 50% of California's power needs were met with solar power. And which said that it was a combination of residential and commercial rooftop generation that constituted 4 million kilowatt hours of electricity during peak time from the hours of 11 to 2 p.m. So this is a pretty big thing, and what this shows, there's some other stuff I'm going to get into in this article. First of all, this was driven by, 20 years ago, the state of California starting to give rebates and stuff like that with getting solar power, encouraging people to get solar power. What that did is that went from 500 solar contractors in Southern California to thousands of them. And it's become big business. And this is the thing I've talked about when we talk about the Green New Deal, of how environmentalism and regulated capitalism could maybe work. I know some of you watching are diehard socialists and you're like, get rid of capitalism, that's awful. And hey, you may be right. I tend to think that the saving of the planet with attacking climate change could also be the thing that saves it economically, with all of these, the carbon bubble, the housing bubble, the student loan bubble, the pension bubble, all of these other bubbles that we've talked about. Not to mention the Fed and the petrodollar and everything else. So this is very interesting because one of the things we need to get more, the utility companies are trying to figure out how to make this profitable, because what ends up happening is there's excess solar energy, and then they don't have a way to store it, but they want to be able to sell energy to people, right? So as I said, it generated 4 million kilowatt hours of electricity during the peak time. During that same time window, wholesale electric rates dipped below zero. So utility companies don't like that. Compared to the average price between $14 to $45 megawatts per hour in March between 2013 and 2015. This is because of the net market oversupply, as many forms of power generation cannot be easily shut down when solar generation peaks. And this is a somewhat legitimate thing, is when solar peaks, it costs a lot of time and money to shut down a gas or coal-fired plant and then turn it back on again. So, which is, I don't know. I hear that and I see that, but it also sounds like a convenient excuse to keep using coal and fossil fuels, right? Because they have to find a way, and maybe they're not, the utility companies aren't so excited about figuring out a way to do this. So, of course, one of the things they did do in the state of California, you got rebates if you had a solar system that put its excess energy back into the grid, so the utility companies could take your energy off of your roof and sell it to other people who didn't have a solar-powered roof. If you got a self-sustaining system, which is battery packs, so then your whole house is off the grid, there was no tax break for that. Just that's how they're trying to stay in business, because they're in the business of selling you energy and electricity. But let me read you some more statistics. California has seen an almost 50% growth rate in the amount of utility scale PV installed last year, contributing to the negative power prices. Indeed, the Golden State is almost half of all the solar power in the U.S. As of December 2016, California's independent system operator, Casio, reported 16 gigawatts of distributed solar, rising from less than 1 gigawatt in 2007. That's pretty amazing, to jump 13 gigawatts in 10 years. The negative wholesale rates did not mean that California owned nothing that Californians owed nothing for their power as it based on average and not single days. However, it does mean that Californian utilities and energy companies will need to rethink what the integration of such a high level of renewable energy means for the state's electricity delivering and pricing. In fact, the situation has already led to the curtailment of solar production during peak hours. See? With thousands of megawatt hours of potential energy getting switched off, even as other non-renewable plants continue to produce. The introduction of grid energy storage will be required to effectively supply 24-hour demand from renewable sources. Meaning, during the middle of the day when the sun's the strongest and it's generating, they need to be able to store this energy. Now, this is something I've talked about before. In the Sun Belt, there's enough sun in many states, even in the northern states, but in the sunny states, California, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Florida, obviously, those states, the southern states, there just needs to redo the grid to store the energy. As I've talked about before, there's enough wind in North and South Dakota to meet 60% of America's electricity needs. That's huge. Again, we need to update the grid. That's another thing that would be part of the New Deal. Update the grid, build more green energy, store it, save it, sell it, put it in areas, right? We have excess solar energy in California. Well, up in, wherever, Wisconsin, they don't. So how can we get it there? We need a smart grid that can send the electricity around. And also, not make it so susceptible to cyber attacks. That's another dangerous thing that could happen. A cyber attack could just shut down the grid. And if it was me, if I had the money and in my own house, I would put on a solar system that was self-sustaining. And I would also get those solar panels, as I did a story on Patreon, that can take moisture from the air. I don't know the science behind this. I'm not a science expert. I don't know water science, and it converts it into clean drinkable water. But this is why, again, a real progressive, a real independent third progressive party, or a real candidate getting into the Green Party or something, would get this and see the financial gain and how this could help the economy and make us more efficient and cleaner energy. It's all doable. It's all right there. But there's a lot of politicians, of course, getting money from the utility companies and all of that. And some of them are Democrats, of course, here in the state of California. So something to pay attention to, something to also back yourselves if you can, as I've talked about before. Get your apartment complex, get your homeowners association. If you live in a condo, get your business, support businesses and put solar on there. I think solar is the future, quite honestly, especially if you live in a state that gets this much sun. Thanks for watching. Patreon link is below. Like, and subscribe.